I understand we have a decision. Let's go to my colleague Elizabeth Schulze.
Alexis and Kira, the Federal Reserve has now cut interest rates by 1/4 percentage point as expected. Again, the Fed cutting rates by 1/4 point as expected. This is the third interest rate cut of this year, bringing the Fed's benchmark interest rate to 3.5%. This decision was divided among the Fed voting members. There were voting against this action at the Fed here today. Stephen Myron, he wanted to have an even bigger rate cut of 0.5 percentage point. Two Fed officials, Austin Goolsbee, Jeffrey Schmid, wanted no change in the Fed's policy. So what this shows is the Fed is moving into a time now where they are more divided about that policy, Kira. But today, the headline delivering the third interest rate cut. This lowers borrowing costs, of course, for consumers and for businesses. The Fed trying to bring down those costs. It has said it's doing that to try to preserve what it has seen as some weakness in the jobs market. It wants to try to preserve the jobs market in the face of that, Kira.
All right, Alexis, read the tea leaves then for us. What do you think the decision says about what the Fed might do next year?
Yeah, I'm reading through this right now, trying to read the tea leaves, and it's subtly altering the word of its statement here, Kira, suggesting that there is greater uncertainty around what the Fed's going to do with interest rates next year. It looks as though the Fed is maintaining its outlook for just one interest rate cut in 2026. Of course, Wall Street and President Trump were hoping for more than that. And let's also remember the complexity of the Fed's going to change next year because Fed Chair Jay Powell's term is up in May. President Trump has made very clear he does not wish for Powell to continue, and he's continuing to interview candidates for that job. We're expecting an announcement in the coming weeks. So lots of changes in store for next week. And the fact that we had 3 dissenters today really does paint a very unclear picture about the path of interest rates going forward, Kira.
All right. Well, Elizabeth, this is all happening as President Trump continues to defend his economic policy and calls for affordability. He actually has been saying that the Democrats have been going on a hoax when it comes to what Americans really can and cannot afford. What's the reality right now about the strength of our economy, and are prices really going down?
Well, prices certainly are not going down, Kira. We know the prices are going up faster than the Federal Reserve wants them to, and that explains why we are seeing some divisions at the Fed about whether or not they should be cutting interest rates at all, despite this interest rate cut announcement just now. I think it's worth pointing out the Fed just released some updated forecasts for where it sees inflation at the end of next year and where it sees the jobs market at the end of next year. The Fed does expect inflation to come down in 2026, projecting 2.4% inflation rate by the end of next year. That would be a big improvement. We're closer to 3% right now. It also looks at the unemployment rate holding steady, Kira. That's good news because the concern had been that we could see the unemployment rate tick up if the Fed doesn't provide support to the economy. So what this might be indicating, the Fed may be more likely now to stay on hold next year, see how this job story plays out, also keep interest rates at the level they are in hopes that prices, perhaps we've seen those bumps from prices from the tariffs, and then those will start to cool. When you think about those price hikes, though, Kira, this doesn't change the fact that cumulatively, over the past 5 years, price levels are what Americans are thinking about. You can talk as much as we want about the rate of inflation going down, Kira, but at the end of the day, that still means that prices are going up. And when you look at the big picture, take a step back over the last 5 years. These numbers are pretty staggering. This is official government data. Healthcare costs up 14%, childcare 16%, groceries, rent, electricity up 30% or more. These are the places people spend their money on day to day. That is why inflation is still such a concern and why we hear that affordability message, one that we have even heard the Fed chair talk about when he talks about those price levels unlikely to come down anytime soon. Even as prices aren't going up as fast, they're also not coming down, Kira.
Ladies, thanks for the reality check. Appreciate it.